On the streets of Los Angeles, nights move fast, engines roar louder than reason, and one bad choice can turn a simple race into a chain reaction that changes everything. In this world, speed is not just a hobby. It is identity, status, and sometimes the only thing that makes people feel alive. Right in the middle of it is a young undercover cop who is supposed to bring down a crew of highway thieves, but the deeper he gets, the harder it becomes to remember which side he is really fighting for. The story begins on a dark highway, where a long-haul truck moves through the night carrying expensive electronics. Out of nowhere, a group of black Honda Civics appears and moves with perfect coordination. They box in the truck, match its speed, and turn the road into a moving crime scene. One of the thieves slips into the trailer while the others keep the driver trapped. In seconds, the cargo is taken and the crew disappears into the darkness. The attack is fast, clean, and terrifying, and it is only one in a series of similar robberies. The police believe the criminals are tied to the street racing scene. The jobs require fearless driving, high-performance cars, and the kind of nerve that only the best drivers seem to have. To get close to the suspects, the authorities send in Brian O'Connor, a young officer with real driving skill and a natural pull toward the world he is supposed to investigate. His mission sounds simple: infiltrate the racers, identify the thieves, and help bring them down. In reality, nothing about it stays simple for long. Brian enters the scene at a packed late-night gathering full of loud engines, neon lights, and restless energy. The races are illegal, but the atmosphere feels almost like a celebration. People come here to show off, settle grudges, make money, and earn respect. Brian arrives as an outsider, and the only way to get noticed is with a car. He races a local driver named Edwin and proves he can handle himself. But the real test comes when he challenges Dominic Toretto. Dominic is not just another racer. He is the center of the whole scene. He carries himself with quiet confidence, and everyone around him responds to that gravity. In the race against Brian, Dominic shows why he is the man to beat. Brian pushes hard and comes close, but Dominic wins. Even in defeat, Brian does enough to get noticed, and in this world that matters. The race is cut short by a police raid. Drivers scatter in every direction and chaos takes over the streets. Brian ends up helping Dominic escape, using his skill behind the wheel to keep them one step ahead. That decision becomes the turning point of the story. Dominic now sees Brian as more than just a random guy with a decent car. Brian has earned a small piece of trust, and in Dominic's world, trust is everything. Through Dominic, Brian is brought into a tighter circle. He meets Letty Ortiz, who is fierce and fearless. He meets Leon, quiet and watchful. He meets Vince, Dominic's longtime friend, who immediately dislikes Brian and treats him like an intruder. Brian also meets Mia Toretto, Dominic's younger sister, who seems tired of the chaos around her but remains loyal to her family. Brian is drawn to her right away, and that makes his mission even more complicated. As Brian spends more time with the group, he begins to understand that this is more than a collection of racers. Dominic has built something like a family around himself. Loyalty matters more than law. Respect is earned by what you do, not what you say. People protect each other, eat together, argue together, and live by a code that feels separate from the outside world. For Brian, the danger is no longer just getting caught. The real danger is that part of him actually wants to stay. Back at the station, Brian reports to Sergeant Tanner and Agent Bilkins, who are growing impatient. They are convinced Dominic's crew is involved in the truck hijackings, but they do not yet have enough proof. Brian is pressured to dig deeper and deliver something concrete. He is caught between two worlds almost immediately. The police see him as a tool. Dominic's crew is starting to see him as one of their own. To strengthen his cover, Brian needs a car that can truly compete. That sends him to Harry, a local mechanic and organizer who understands the racers and the money behind the scene. Brian gets help building a machine fast enough to earn respect, and the work matters because he is not just pretending to be a driver. He genuinely loves cars, speed, and the freedom that comes with both. That truth makes him better at the job, but it also makes the line between duty and desire much harder to hold. Tension with Vince keeps growing. Vince has known Dominic for years, and he sees Brian as a threat from the moment he appears. He does not trust outsiders, especially one getting close to Mia. Their hostility simmers constantly, and Brian refuses to back down, which only deepens the conflict. The story then shifts to race wars. a huge desert racing event where drivers from all over gather to compete, show off, and settle old rivalries. It is part festival and part battleground. Brian arrives there with Dominic crew still trying to figure out whether these are truly the people behind the hijackings. Race Wars expands the world around the characters. There are more racers, more suspicion, and more chances for everything to fall apart. Dominic also has a long-standing feud with Johnny Tran, another powerful figure in the local racing scene. Johnny runs his own crew and has a history with Dominic that still burns hot. The police latch onto that tension, thinking one of these men must be tied to the robberies. Brian, desperate to produce results, starts following clues that point toward Johnny. This leads to one of Brian's biggest mistakes. He helps direct the investigation toward Johnny Tran, and the police raid one of Johnny's properties. They find stolen goods, which briefly makes it seem like the case is solved. But the relief does not last. The items found are not the electronics from the truck robberies. The real crew is still out there, and Brian has just pushed the wrong people into the spotlight. The error damages the investigation and adds another layer of pressure. While the case grows messier, Brian and Mia become closer. Their connection is quiet but real. Mia sees that Brian is different from the other men around Dominic. He is less hardened and more open. Brian sees in Mia the possibility of something steady and honest. The problem is that his entire relationship with her is built on a lie. The more genuine their bond becomes, the more painful that truth will be. At the same time, the film gives Brian a deeper understanding of Dominic. He learns about the tragedy that shaped him. Years earlier, Dominic's father died in a race after another driver caused a violent crash. Dominic witnessed that loss, and it carved something permanent into him. The street racing life is not just thrill-seeking for Dominic. It is memory, pain, and control. When he drives, he is chasing a feeling that lets him forget everything else for a moment. Brian and Dominic eventually share a conversation that becomes one of the emotional anchors of the film. Brian gets to see the man behind the legend. Dominic opens up just enough to reveal how deeply loss and pressure have shaped him. Brian listens, and his feelings begin to shift. Dominic is no longer just the prime suspect in a case. He is a man carrying grief, loyalty, and responsibility in a way Brian can now understand. The clock keeps ticking. The truck drivers who have been targeted are becoming more desperate. One of them decides he will not be a victim again and arms himself heavily. That means the next robbery is almost certain to turn violent. If Dominic crew really is involved, someone may not survive the night. Then everything starts to crack. Mia discovers that Brian is actually a police officer. The betrayal hits hard because the person she was beginning to trust has been lying from the beginning. Brian has almost no time to explain. He now believes Dominic crew is heading out for another robbery, and he needs to stop them before the situation turns deadly. In a desperate move, he tells Mia the truth and begs her to help him find Dominic. Mia finally gives in, not because she believes in the badge, but because she knows what is about to happen if no one intervenes. Brian reaches the crew as they prepare for another highway hit. This time the truck driver fights back aggressively. The robbery becomes chaos on wheels. The driver swerves, bullets fly, and the careful precision of the earlier attacks disappears. Everything is now panic, damage, and survival. Vince ends up hanging from the side of the truck, badly injured and moments away from being crushed or thrown onto the road. Brian has a choice. He can protect his cover and let events play out, or he can expose himself to save a man who hates him. He chooses to save Vince. Brian calls for emergency help, reveals his identity, and risks the whole operation to pull Vince out alive. In that instant, his double life ends. The job collapses for Dominic crew. Letty is injured in the chaos. Vince is taken for medical treatment. Leon disappears. Dominic realizes Brian is the undercover officer who entered his world under false pretenses, and the betrayal cuts deep. For Dominic, loyalty is the foundation of everything, and Brian has broken it at the worst possible moment. What follows is a race toward consequences. Dominic is furious, wounded, and unwilling to be cornered. Brian tries to keep the situation from getting even worse, but the damage is already done. The crew is broken, the law is closing in, and Dominic has only one way left to move. The conflict with Johnny Tran rises again, and suspicion, anger, and revenge collide. Brian and Dominic end up chasing Johnny and his cousin through the streets in a violent pursuit. This is no longer about police strategy or undercover work. It is about rage, unfinished business, and survival. The chase is fast and brutal, and it ends with wreckage and death. Whatever balance still existed in this world is now gone. But the true ending belongs to Brian and Dominic. After everything that has happened, after the bond, the deception, and the bloodshed, the two men face each other one last time at a railroad crossing. Dominic is ready to run. Brian could arrest him right there and finish the mission he started. Instead, they settle things the only way that makes sense in their world. They race. It is not a race for money or status anymore. It is a race loaded with everything between them. Brian launches hard, Dominic pushes even harder. Traffic flashes around them as they speed toward the crossing. The train is coming and neither man wants to lift. They clear the tracks at the last second, but almost immediately Dominic's car is smashed by a truck and flips through the air. Brian runs to the wreckage and finds Dominic alive, hurt but breathing. Sirens are closing in. The choice Brian has tried to avoid for the entire movie is now right in front of him. He can arrest Dominic and prove he was always a cop first, or he can accept that the connection between them changed everything. Brian looks at Dominic, then hands over the keys to his own car and lets him go. Dominic drives away while Brian stays behind, alone with the consequences of his choice. He has failed the mission he was assigned, but in another sense he has acted according to a code he chose for himself. The Fast and the Furious is not just about street races and stolen cargo. It is about loyalty, identity, and the cost of seeing the humanity in someone you were supposed to bring down. By the end, the loudest thing left is not the engines. It is the truth that one race, one friendship, and one choice can change the road ahead.